Hey guys, it's Archon, and I just want to make this quick video for you guys explaining the Archon build for the Wizard. This build has gotten a lot more popular recently as it is hands down the best build for solo farming, for leveling up your Paragon, and probably for farming legendaries. It does really well in the low MPs and is a good alternative for critical mass or if you're just getting a little bored of critical mass. So first I'm going to explain what the build is, then we'll go over what skills you should use, and then what stats you need for the build to work, and then what MP and areas you should be farming on once you get the build working. So just to explain what the build is, in case you haven't heard of it before, the Archon build allows you to stay in Archon form all the time. You never have to get out of Archon form, which means you can just own everything really well. It gives you more defense, you do a ton of damage, and you can farm really efficiently. And the reason you can stay in Archon the whole time is because every time you kill an enemy in Archon, you get 1 more second to the duration of Archon. So as long as you're killing at least 1 enemy per second, you'll never run out of Archon. So that's really the trick. And it's not too hard to do with some pretty basic stats. I actually have another video showing how you can get your whole gear set up for about 1 million gold and start farming really efficiently. So, the skills you need for the Archon build. There are a lot of different combinations of skills you can use. Everyone does a little bit of a different build. It's not like the critical mass where it's a pretty standard build set. So I'm going to go over all the different variations you can use. We're starting off here with what I use. This is when I farm. This is pretty much the skills that I use. I will change them around for different circumstances, but we'll go over each skill one at a time. So first of all, your primary attack. This is how you're going to kill enemies when Archon does fall off. Every once in a while, Archon's going to fall off and it's still going to be off cooldown and you're not going to be able to get back in it, and so you need something to kill enemies with. I like to use Spectral Blade with Throne Blade. Spectral Blade does a lot of damage. Of the skills that don't cost arcane power, it probably does the most damage, and Throne Blade allows you to attack from 20 yards away, so you don't have to get up right in their faces, and it's a little bit more safe. Now, Electrocute has a little bit more range, but doesn't do quite as much damage. And I've used this before, but I've switched over to Spectral Blade since then. And most people use the Forked Lightning rune on Electrocute. You have a lot of crit chance usually in Archon, so you're going to be proccing Forked Lightning all the time, and it's a good amount of extra damage, a little bit of AoE. On Spectral Blade, you can also use Healing Blades. A lot of people like to do that just to get more health back, so you can play around with both of those, see which one gives you more survivability. Now, if you're using Critical Mass, which I do, but you don't have to, it's one of the passives, of course. Another option that some people use is Energy Twister. And with Energy Twister, you can use Wicked Wind or Minstrel Breeze, whatever works best for you. And it's not going to do as much damage, and it does cost arcane power, so you have the possibility of running out of arcane power. However, it does get your cooldowns back faster, because of course the critical mass passive makes it so your cooldowns go down by 1 second every time you get a crit. And so Wicked Wind gets a lot of ticks, rather Energy Twister does, and so while you're not going to be able to kill guys as quickly, you'll be able to get back into Archon a little bit faster. So there's 3 skills you can play around with there. Familiar with Spark Flint is just a way to get some extra damage. You don't really need anything else in this slot, so you might as well put it there. Now, of course, it doesn't matter where you put the skills. You can put them on whatever number you want. This is just where I have them. But I would definitely recommend using Familiar with Spark Flint. I don't think there's really any other runes that make sense to use there for the most part. Magic Weapon, again, just a big damage increase. And Blood Magic is good if you don't have enough lifesteal. If you have a weapon with lifesteal, you might not need this. The only reason you really ever need it is for reflect damage packs. I don't have any lifesteal. Now, I would recommend that pretty much everyone gets lifesteal on their weapon. I'm gearing up for PvP. I don't think lifesteal is going to be that important, and I have a really nice weapon without lifesteal. So for the most part, get lifesteal. Don't do what I'm doing, because reflect damage packs are still really hard for me, even on the lower MPs. But if you don't need extra lifesteal, if you're doing fine with reflect damage packs, or you just don't care to have more lifesteal, Force Weapon is also good. It gives you another 5% damage there. So either of those, but definitely use Magic Weapon. This skill right here, I use Teleport, mostly just so when I'm out of Archon I can get around faster. But some people also use Diamond Skin. And I think Diamond Skin is especially good on the higher MPs. If you're going to be out of Archon and taking a lot of damage, Diamond Skin is good just to stay alive. long enough to get your health back from whatever your main attack is. Crystal Shell is going to give you the most defense. If you're using Energy Twister, you could try using Prism. That reduces the Arcane Power cost, and you can get your Arcane back faster. If you have Arcane Power on crit, you probably won't need to worry about Arcane Power, because Energy Twister will get you a lot of Arcane Power back on its own. And there's other skills you can use there. Some people use Frost Nova, but I think Diamond Skin or Teleport are probably the two best ones to put there. This is really just an empty slot. You really didn't even need a spell right here. You could do it just fine with the other 5. So it's just whatever you want to put there. I'll do Archon last. Storm Armor with Scramble is great for moving faster, but it's not going to provide as much defense as Energy Armor. This is usually what I use. It makes it, Storm Armor on its own makes it so you electrocute enemies nearby you, which is kind of nice because you can kind of ignore some of the smaller enemies and it'll just pick them off for you. I just run by most of the small enemies if there's not a big group of them. And then Scramble, the rune, makes it so whenever you get hit, your movement speed is increased by 25% for 3 seconds. And 3 seconds doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it's a lot of time when you're going through the game. And so when you have this on, you can kind of just get a little bit closer to mobs, make sure you're getting hit every once in a while, and it does increase your farm speed by quite a bit, just always having that movement speed up. Now, if you want a little bit more defense and damage instead of some extra movement speed, then Energy Armor with Pinpoint is good. I usually would use Energy Armor with Pinpoint if I was running a budget build, didn't have the best damage and defense on me, or if I was doing higher MPs or playing with a group. Pinpoint's great. It gives you 5% additional crit, which is a lot of damage when you have a lot of crit damage, and you probably will in your Archon build. If you are running on a really high MP, if you're playing with a group, or like I do Ubers every once in a while, even though Archon is not the best for Ubers, Critical Mass is a lot better, you could use Prismatic, and that'll give you the most defense, of course. But I use Storm Armor with Scramble most of the time, except for when I'm playing in higher MPs or with a group. And then on Archon, you have a couple of runes you can choose from. I have Teleport on there right now. It's just going to give you a little bit more speed. I wouldn't recommend Teleport for most people, though, because you could choose Improved Archon over that, and that's 25% additional damage, which is a lot of damage, 25%. So the only time I would go to Teleport instead of Improved Archon is if you're already one-shotting most mobs. If you're already one-shotting most mobs, at 25% is mostly going to be overkill, and it's not really going to be utilized, and a little bit of a gap closer with Teleport is going to increase your speed more than another 25% damage. For the most part, though, especially when you're just starting out, I think Improved Archon's the way to go. The only other one I would think about using is Pure Power. It just reduces the cooldown of Archon, and I think this might be worth it if you're playing on a much higher MP or with a group when you know you're going to be out of Archon all the time. It'll just minimize the time that you're out of Archon. I would use this if I was doing Ubers or playing in a group on a high MP. So that's all the skills. You can kind of just play around with those, figure out what's best for you. We'll go through the passives now. Right now I have Glass Cannon, Critical Mass, and Galvanizing Ward, but all of these can be changed up. You don't have to use any of these. I think most people will want to use Glass Cannon. You do need a lot of damage in Archon because you need to be able to kill at least one enemy per second, and you don't need that much defense because the Archon skill itself is going to give you a lot of defense. However, if you already have a lot of damage and you don't have much defense, you might not want to use Glass Cannon. You can play around with it and see what works better. Critical Mass, this is good for getting your cooldowns down. It works in and out of Archon. So even your spells in Archon will come off cooldown just from that laser. Even though you won't see crit numbers from the laser, internally it still procs Critical Mass, which means that your cooldowns will come down, and it'll even bring the cooldown of the Archon spell down while you're in Archon. If you have a really high crit chance, I think it's worth using. And then once you're out of Archon, you can get the cooldown of that spell down a little bit quicker if you have this as well. It doesn't proc that much with Spectral Blades or Electrocute, but it still does make a little bit of a difference. So, and then I have Galvanizing Ward. This gives you a little bit of life regen, but I mostly use it just to keep my armor up through Archon, because normally your armor only lasts for 2 minutes, and your magic weapon lasts for 5 minutes. So your armor's going to fall off a lot sooner than your magic weapon. This will close that gap a little bit and make it last for 4 minutes, because your buffs are going to come off while you're in Archon, and you're going to need to right click on Archon to take the buff off, to take Archon off, rebuff, and then put Archon back on, and you're going to have to do that a lot more if you don't use Galvanizing Ward. Now, like I said, any 3 of these could be replaced. If you want to, you could use Temporal Flux. because you're doing arcane damage in Archon, using Temporal Flux will slow the enemies. So if you're having a hard time staying alive, especially if melee enemies are getting to you and doing too much damage to you, you can use Temporal Flux. The other one that you might want to try out would be Blur. I really don't think it's worth it, but some people do just to reduce melee damage. But you're rarely getting hit by melee, or Evocation to bring down the cooldown of Archon. So you can try all of those, play around with them. I really think that these three are the best: Glass Cannon, Critical Mass, and Galvanizing Ward, but of course you have some other options. So those are the skills you're going to be using in Archon. Again, play around with those. Next, I just want to cover the stats that you need for the Archon build to work. I have a lot more damage than you need for the build to work. I think damage-wise, it's probably going to be the hardest thing to get up, but you only need about 70 to 80,000 damage to do Act 3 with no monster power. 70 to 80,000 damage, you'll do fine in MP0, Act 3. You should have no problem keeping Archon up, at least once you get the build down. It takes a little while to get the feel for it, but that's what I try to hit. If you can't get to 70 or 80,000 damage, then keep building up your set. But like I said, my other video shows how you can get there no problem with about 1 million gold. My all-res are a lot higher than you need them to be. And right now I actually have Glass Cannon on. So let's take it off just so I can show you my unbuffed stats. So you can see my all-res are actually up close to 800. The only reason I have so much all-res is I'm getting ready for PvP, and I think I'm going to need a lot more all-res for that. But unbuffed, I think the minimum you need for Archon is 450. If you can get 450 with Glass Cannon on, even better, but I wouldn't stress about it too much. If you can get 450 unbuffed, you're going to be fine. You get a lot of extra all-res and armor in Archon, and enemies are rarely getting to you, and you're also getting a lot of health back with your lifesteal. Like I said, I think you want to have lifesteal on your weapon. Armor unbuffed, I think you need about 3,000. I have about 3,500. 3,000 unbuffed, you'll be fine. Health, you want about 30,000. If you can get up to 35,000, even better. But 30,000 health, you'll be fine. So as you can probably tell, you don't need nearly as much defense as you would need in a Critical Mass build or a Kiting build, just because you have so much extra defense from Archon and you're getting so much health back from lifesteal. I have a lot of life regen. Again, that's just for PvP. I'm just getting ready for that. Health Globe pickup, not necessary for the build to work, but it's really good for farming in general. Because when you're in Archon, you don't have time to run around and get all the piles of gold. You're going to lose your Archon buff if you do. And so typically, if you don't have pickup, you're just going to leave that gold there. I'm trying to get up to about 20 yards pickup, and that would get all the gold. But it's probably not the thing you want to get right away, but eventually you want to add some pickup radius just so you're making more gold throughout your run. One thing that you definitely want, though, is 24% movement speed. So get it on your boots, and then either get some Lacunis, Ethereal's Might, or Innis Pants. If you want, you can get 2 of those and not get it on your boots. But either way, you want to get that 24% movement speed. It caps out at 25%, so don't bother getting 3 pieces. But that 24% movement speed is really going to help you get to the mobs quick enough to keep Archon up, and it's just going to make your farming run a lot faster in general. So I'm pretty sure those are all the stats you need. Crit chance, crit damage, you want to get the most out of that combination, try to get your crit damage about 10 times what your crit chance is. You see my crit chance is a little bit higher. It's easier to do when you have a one-hand and offhand. I think that's typically how you want to go. You want to get a one-hand that's black damage, which means it doesn't have any added elemental damage, and then a triumvirate, I think is the best way, because that fire, lightning, arcane damage, that all adds 100% of that damage to black damage. So with this one, I'm getting 17% additional damage to all my weapon damage. It's a huge increase. Triumvirate's definitely the way to go if you can get a black weapon rather. Attack speed, you don't need to stack attack speed like you would in Critical Mass. It really only helps you for the amount of damage it gives you. So 6% attack speed, if you had no attack speed, would give you an extra 6% of your overall damage. The more attack speed you get, the less increase you get compared to your overall damage. So if you already have 50% attack speed added and you get another 5, it's not increasing your overall damage by 5, it's increasing the damage you would have with no attack speed by 5. So getting a little bit of attack speed will give you a big burst in damage, but you typically have to pay a lot for attack speed. So stacking it, I don't think is worth it. Just get it where you can, but focus on crit chance and crit damage, because those two multiply each other. So if you get them both really high, they'll do a lot for your damage. And of course, intelligence is also going to get your damage up a lot. And if you're using a one-hander and offhand, you have a pretty good attack speed, average damage is going to do a lot for you. Average damage is really underrated, as well as that percent to elemental damage if you have a black weapon. So you can see again on the Triumvirate, but you can also get it on Tal Rasha's Stormcrow have it, Zuni's boots have it. A lot of pieces have that percentage to elemental damage. Doesn't really matter what type of elemental damage is, it's going to increase your damage by that amount. Life on hit really does nothing for the Archon build. You want life steal. Life regen will help a little bit. I have it only for PvP though. You'll see I don't have lifesteal on my weapon like I said, but I really recommend getting it on your weapon because that'll keep you up really well. And even the 2% is usually enough, but it really depends on how much damage you do. And a good test of if you have enough lifesteal is how reflect damage packs affect you. If you see your health just drop down super fast with reflect damage, try putting blood magic on your magic weapon buff, and if you're still dropping down, you might want to get some more lifesteal, but usually blood magic is enough if you don't have enough lifesteal. So that's all the stats you need. If you want to see exactly what gear you should buy for each slot, I'd recommend checking out my other video. This shows how to build a budget Archon build. So now the last thing I wanted to talk about is farming routes. Where should you farm based on your stats? And I have about 400,000 damage completely buffed. Let's see, with Scramble, I'm a little bit lower than that. Actually, I'm not sure. Oh, I don't have Glass Cannon on right now. That's right. I took that off. But even with my damage being around 380 to 400,000, I actually farm on MP1 most of the time, which might sound a little bit weird. But because I have a high Paragon and a little bit of Magic Find on my gear, the extra 25% Magic Find going from MP1 to MP2 only actually gives me an extra 6% Magic Find. That might be a little confusing because it seems like you should get 25% more items if you have 25% more Magic Find. But keep in mind, you have a base Magic Find of 100%. You're finding 100% of however many items you find without Magic Find. So if you're getting an additional, for me right now, it's 296. I'm at actually 396 total Magic Find, so about 400. So adding 25% Magic Find will take me up to 425% of the normal Magic Find with none. And with Paragon, I'm sorry, not with Paragon, with Nephilim, that would take it up to 500 because you can get an extra 75% from Nephilim. So it's not going from 0 Magic Find to 25% Magic Find, which would be a 25% increase. I'm sorry, or 100% to 125, I should say. It's really going from 475 to 500% Magic Find, which I did the math before. I think it's about 6% increase. I'd have to do it again. So it's not nearly as much of an increase as you think it would be. You can do the math for yourself and figure out how much additional Magic Find you're getting. I'm sorry if that's a little complicated to try to explain it as best I can, but you're not getting 25% more items moving up 1 MP. So basically, I did the math. I'm not farming 6% fat. I'm farming less than 6% slower on MP2, and therefore it's not worth it for me to move up 1 MP. But to explain it a little bit simpler, you want to be on an MP where you're one-shotting most mobs. You're not going to be one-shotting everyone like Golgors and obviously not elite packs. Any white mobs with a lot of health, you're probably going to have to hold your laser down for more than a second. But if you just tap your laser once and that kills most enemies, then you're good. Try moving up 1 MP. If it still is one-shotting most enemies, try to move 1 MP. If you're not one-shotting enemies, move down 1 MP. Because if you have to take 2 shots to kill enemies instead of 1, it's taking you twice as long to kill it. It doesn't matter how much damage you're doing, it just matters how many attacks you have to use on each enemy. So try to get a place where you're one-shotting the majority of the enemies, and you'll go a lot faster that way. Now the other thing you can do is play around with your skills. Try to find a place where you're just barely one-shotting enemies, and then you'll be getting the most out of your damage. So if you feel like the MP you're playing on, you're getting a little bit of overkill, try adding Scramble with Storm Armor. That'll take down your damage a little bit, or Archon with Teleport. That'll also take down your damage a little bit. If you're still able to one-shot things, then that's probably a good place to farm for you, because you're going to be getting a lot more movement speed from Teleport and Scramble on there, and you'll still be killing enemies just as fast, except for, of course, the elite packs and the white mobs with a lot of health. So play around with that. Just find what MP you can soar through the quickest. You want to play on the highest MP as possible while still one-shotting elite packs. But like I said, I still farm on MP1. I tried MP2 for a while, and it's not a big difference, but I probably slow down by about 10%. And because of my high Paragon, it's just not, it's just too big of a difference in time. It doesn't make up for that tiny bit of extra magic find I'm getting, as well as experience. As for your farming route, I would recommend doing Act 3. You can play around with which areas in there are the most efficient for you, but I'll tell you what route I use. My route is pretty similar to the Alkaizer route. In the previous game, I'll usually get the Core of Ariat checkpoint, so when I spawn in, I'm right there at the end of Core of Ariat. I'll go all the way through there. I'll take the waypoint to Tower of the Damned level 1, do the full loop around Tower of the Damned, go back to the waypoint, take that to Ariat Crater level 2, go all the way through there, out the exit and down the stairs. There's another waypoint. Sometimes there's an elite pack right there as well. Take that waypoint to Keep Depths level 1, go straight into Keep Depths level 2, to all of Keep Depths level 2. If I reach a dead end first, I'll teleport and go to Keep Depths level 3, or I'll just go straight from Keep Depths level 2 into level 3. From there I can take the Keep Depths level 3 waypoint or teleport back and go to Rakkus Crossing. I go all the way down Rakkus Crossing and then do the full loop in Fields of Slaughter. And that's the end of my farming route. Some people also add Stone Fort, but I don't really find it worth it. You just want a route where you're getting 5 Nephilim stacks and you have it for a while, but you're not wasting your time in any of the lower populated areas. You're just not farming as efficiently, and it's harder to keep Archon up. But the one cool thing about the Archon build is you really know when you're farming efficiently, because Archon stays up as long as you're killing at least 1 mob per second. So I hope this has been a good explanation of the Archon build. Hopefully this will help you guys get started with Archon, decide what skills to use, make sure you have the right stats, and decide where to farm. Please check out that other video. It's the budget set. You can learn how to build a 1 million set for your Archon Wizard. And if you liked the video, please hit that subscribe button. I'll have another one for you soon.